Welcome to this week's edition of Coach Prep. Coach Don and I are here in the Cherokee Batting Range podcast studio getting ready to record episode number 222. We're going to talk about how keeping up with the Joneses might not always be the best strategy. Before we do that, though, let's talk about the Anderson Bat Company.
Everything Fast Pitch is very proud to have Anderson Bat Company as our presenting sponsor. Anderson Bat Company is using the latest and greatest bat technology to corner the market in the fast pitch world. They have the -9 Rocket Tech, the -10 Carbon, and the -11 Carbon Light. Anderson Bat Company is using this technology to put a high-performing bat in the hands of hitters that really know the difference between a good bat and a great bat. We're also working with Anderson to provide a discount for all of our listeners. Go to the Anderson Bat Company website and order your bats. Use the EFP20 discount, which is for everything fast pitch, and you'll get a 20% discount.
Take advantage of that EFP20 discount, folks. It saves you an additional 20% and helps to support the podcast at the same time. Also, if you're in a position where you can, if you see value in what we're doing, we would love for you to become a patron. Go to patreon.com/everythingfastpitch. We're talking about $5, $10, or $20 a month. We have a great group of patrons that have been supporting us for quite some time. We would love to see that momentum continue. If you're in a position, again, where you can help us, we would love to have your help. So go to patreon.com/everythingfastpitch. So, Don, we've all heard the old saying, keeping up with the Joneses.
Sure, yeah.
And we see it in the softball world all the time because one team's worried about, well, if the other team is practicing, we need to practice. The other team's playing in a tournament, we need to be playing in a tournament. Another team is doing this trip to this place, so we have to do the same trip to the same place. And on and on and on, the list of things that we have to do because other people are doing them, the list continues to get longer and longer. But I'm going to throw something out there for the committee to consider today, that keeping up with the Joneses might be a really bad strategy and in a lot of ways can be totally counterproductive and hurtful for teams and players, because just because the Joneses are doing it doesn't necessarily mean that it's right.
Tori, but if your team's doing something, then my kids might feel like they're missing out. Are they?
Well, they might be missing out on something that's bad for them, stupid, that doesn't make sense, that doesn't help make them a better team.
But I heard they were practicing this weekend and
in the snow or in the sleet, doing diving drills into snowbanks because that way they could dive and not have to worry about getting hurt.
So wait a minute. So they might get, half of them might get ill because it's bad weather and
right.
But if you're doing it, then I should be, shouldn't I?
Well, that's what I think traps a lot of us. So from a coach's perspective, it's just kind of human nature, right? We look around at what other people are doing, and we think that if somebody else is doing it, it's got to have some sort of validity or some sort of value. And my take on it is really kind of simple. I think that one of the things that most of us admire is when we see something that's innovative, something that's new, something that's creative, something that kind of goes against the grain that ultimately ends up working. I've talked about the Mike Candrea story about him changing his hitting philosophy because it dawned on him that he could do some things better and help his players be a little bit more successful. Well, all of us had been keeping up with the Joneses. We'd all been using the Candrea methods for as long as we could remember, thinking that this guy's the genius of all things softball. But when he decided to break the mold and become innovative and do something a little bit different, all of a sudden we all got to be a lot better hitting coaches, and we all got a lot smarter, and our hitters became better hitters. So to me, I think I'm challenging our coaches to start to think about is, rather than worrying about what other people are doing and trying to do the same thing, let's start thinking about different things and better things and innovative things that we can do. Thing that has to go hand in hand with that is we have to make sure that our parents and players and everybody understands why we're being innovative, why we're being different. But I think that from a parent's perspective, if I had two coaches pitching to me two different agendas, Coach A is, well, we're going to do everything that everybody else does because it's proven that what everybody else is doing is what everybody else does. And because everybody else does it.
For them, it's got to work for us.
Because everybody else does it, we're going to do it in the exact same way because everybody else is doing it that way. Or if somebody else said, you know what, we want to beat all those guys, so we're going to do something different.
So wait a minute.
Oh, we want to be better than all those guys, so we're going to do something different. We're going to change the way people think about practices, or we're going to change the way people think about the game, or we're going to change the way that things get done because we want to be better than or stronger than or more successful than.
Trendsetter.
Versus the follower.
Yeah.
And so to me, I think that's the challenge that we want to throw out there for our coaches, Because to me, I think the if it's not broke, don't fix it mentality has a certain amount of usefulness, but it also has an awful lot of limitations. And the idea that not doing something different
could be average, right?
right,
That could make you average.
yeah, because we want to do what other people are doing. Why be like everybody else? I can't think of
What's going to make you better than everybody else
right.
at that point, right?
Yeah, I can't think of any place in the world where being just like everybody else and doing just what everybody else does is going to be the secret to success. Now,
might
it's
help
the
us
secret
barely keep up.
It's the secret to being comfortable. It's the secret to being average. It's the secret to being right in the middle of the pack. But there's an old saying goes something like average means that you're the best of the bad and the worst of the best, right? So rather than being in this,
I'm gonna have to replay that one.
Yeah, the best of the bad or the worst of the best. So instead of being in the middle, instead of being like everybody else, start to think about some things you can do. So let's say it's a cold, miserable, rainy day, and your biggest rival team, they're going to be out there on the field for 6 hours today, no matter what. They're going to figure out a way to get a good practice in this 6 hours of miserable, drippy, drizzly, awful, terrible, cold weather. And now we can admire their stick-to-itiveness and their effort and toughness and all that stuff, or we can figure out a way to get twice as much done by going indoors. We can figure out a way to get twice as much done by doing a chalk talk. We can figure out a way to get more stuff done by having
working your plays on a mini field.
Right. Doing
indoors.
Anything else that you need to do a better job instead of doing the same job. Well, that team's so tough. They're out there practicing no matter what. I say, okay, is that tough or dumb? I can think of a lot of stuff we did that we thought made us tough. So now again, this is going to tell you how old I am. But if you asked for a drink of water at a football practice, you were weak, you were soft, you were terrible, and there were a lot of other names that your coaches and teammates were going to call you that we can't say anymore.
But other groups did that too because they thought that's what.
But everybody thought that was, that's what tough players do. The scene from Remember the Titans when one of the players is like, "Coach, we need a water break," and Denzel Washington goes into this tirade. Water makes you weak. Water, is for washing blood off of my uniform. You don't need water. Another, stretch of torturous training until eventually they finally get a little water break. But that's how we all used to think and act. Well, we were tough, but we were stupid. And our coaches were trying to make us tough, but they probably put us at risk to have all kinds of health problems.
Issues, yeah.
I can say without a shadow of a doubt, I think I've probably had maybe 20 concussions in my life. And you know what happened when you got a concussion when I was a kid? They gave you smelling salts
to get you back in there.
To clear your head enough that you could stagger back out there and keep playing. So was that tough? Well, yeah, it was tough. Was everybody else was doing it? Well, of course everybody else was doing it. Well, now what do we know? That's a really bad strategy. Well, the practicing
something different might have been something better. Yeah.
So now how did that change? Eventually, we got smarter. We listened. Somebody was innovative enough or wanted to do something different enough
and brave and courageous enough to change.
Right. Yeah. And so next time, your team is, and here's the one that, again, the keeping up with the Joneses, that is the curse of travel ball. Well, they're playing, so we have to play. Well, our players feel like they're getting gypped if they don't get to play as much as other people. Well, this other team's going to play 8 tournaments and we're only going to play 6. Well, if you're doing a good enough job as a coach saying, yeah, but what we're going to get done in practice is going to make us a better team. And if you have faith in what we're doing and you believe in what we're doing, that 2 weekends of practice we're going to have instead of the 2 more weekends of tournaments that they're going to have is going to make a big difference in how we're performing at the end of the year. Then again, I think we're innovating. We're creating something that's going to have a much better success rate for the long haul. But we've got to make sure that we're understanding that we've got to be willing to step outside the box. We've got to be selling why we're stepping outside the box, and we got to have enough conviction in what we're doing to stick with it, even when it would be a whole lot easier to just follow along with all the other sheep.
Yeah, no, I like what you're saying, Tori. And in the tournaments, we might get 10 at bats, 12 at bats, whatever it might be, but the next coach is going to say, well, we're going to have a couple people come out and pitch live to us this weekend.
Right.
So we're not going to follow everybody else and play those 8 tournaments every weekend. We're going to play 5, but on the other 3, we're going to be getting 4 times as many live at bats.
Yep.
And just thinking about doing things different, and that is, like you said, how how we can set ourselves apart from everyone else by not following everybody else, right? And that's part of the magic.
Well, so to go back to the original idea of keeping up with the Joneses, just change your name to Jones and just be one of them.
Be a Jones. be the one they're following.
Yeah, don't keep up with them. Just become one. You just adopt them as that's your mantra. Or you can be we're going to be something extra. We're going to be something better. We're going to be something different. We're going to do what it takes to separate ourselves from the crowd. And those kinds of teams and those kinds of people are going to have a whole lot more fun in the long haul.
Let them keep up with us.
Yeah, let them try to figure out how they're going to keep up with us when what we're doing that seemed a little revolutionary at the beginning ends up being the true secret to having some success.
Awesome.
All right, so that's going to wrap up number 222. Make sure you support the Anderson Bat Company. Become a patron if you can. Patreon.com/everythingfastpitch. Go to the fastpitchprep.com website. Order your Square Cuts training discs there. They're $49.95 a dozen. You also have access to the YouTube channel and the blog posts. There's tons and tons of information at fastpitchprep.com. So for Coach Don McKinley and our producer Stan Lewis, this is Coach Torrey saying thanks for listening. We'll talk to you again next week.